Puppet Master. Whether you've seen it or not, you've definitely heard of it. This series, which refuses to die, is easily Full Moon's most successful franchise ever, and the only one really worth watching. The movie opens up in the 30s, where we see a magician, alchemist, whatever, named Andre Toulon, and he's stashing away his collection of animated marionettes. After managing to hide them, he offs himself just before a couple of men break in to kill him, and this is when we hop to present day. That's right, this movie takes place in 2023. Well, actually, it's more like present day 1990, but whatever. From here we follow a group that has magical abilities. There's Alex, the main one, he's a man that can dream the future. Dana, a woman who can read the future, like Alex, but without the dream requirement, or something. Then there's the blonde lady who's able to see the history of objects she comes into contact with. And there's the final guy who Blondie screws. I forget what he does, but one thing's for sure, his ability definitely has nothing to do with intelligence, cause this idiot gets a dolly kissing scene while blindfolded and for some reason thinks that's his fully human-sized wife. Well, girlfriend, whatever Blondie is. Anyway, so the group go to the Bodega Bay Inn, the place where their old friend Neil used to reside. They go there believing he learned the secrets of the Puppet Master, but alas, he's dead. It's amazing how none of the psychics saw that one coming, but yeah. He's not really dead though. You see, Neil cheated death, and he's actually alive. I mean, he did kill himself, but he somehow brought himself back to life after doing that. Anyway, after finding out the death of their friend Neil, the group try finding the Puppet Master's secret magic stuff. We learn that the magic is some sort of ancient Egyptian thing, and that's how Andre was able to animate inanimate objects. And as the group are trying to find the man's stuff, they, do a whole lot of nothing. Dana picks a little fight with Neil's wife who's there too, and then kinda screws off and minds her business until Pinhead decides to come get her ass. Blondie and her man, they get up to some naughty stuff involving blindfolding and tying up the man. And it's during this when Tunneler gets the jump on her. I don't know how. She looked under the bed, she saw Tunneler stand up, she just kind of waited for him to run across the length of the bed, and yeah, I don't know how he was able to do that. I guess he found some new glitches or hacks or something. This must be the Puppet Master game. Maybe he cheated somehow. Maybe her AI wasn't working. Her man is then kissed on by a leech woman, who ends up leaving leeches on him and, well, you know, kills him obviously. Now as for Alex, he's asleep. He's woken up at one point by Neil's wife, and they end up going to the dining room where they see Neil himself in the bodies, surrounded by some of the puppets. Neil brags about cheating death and then tosses the jester puppet around before laying the beatdown on his wife and Alex. And when Alex starts fighting back, he manages to send Neil into the elevator where Pinhead closes him in and the puppets kill him. Which, funny enough, may actually be from the one scene I remember of this movie. I remember seeing a tiny bit of this movie as a kid. It might have been Neil's death. All I know is it involved a man being attacked in or around an elevator, and I remember Pinhead and Blade being there, maybe Tunneler? Puppet Master as a series, and especially just this first classic film, is one I've definitely been meaning to get to since I began watching horror. I mean, if any of you have been around since then, you'd know the very first banner art this channel ever had featured Blade in it. Ultimately though, I don't think I was missing anything, and that pains me to say. I really wish it was a lot better, but no, Puppet Master isn't a horrible movie. It's not perfect or anything all that special, but at least it's not bad. It's just an movie with some really fun moments. This is a good film, with an interesting story and some nice puppet work, but I'm hoping the sequels are better. I'm not gonna hold my breath though, given the fact that Full Moon isn't really known for making great quality content. I mean, most of their newer stuff is just an excuse for weed and tits. In the end, this may surprise some people, I would give the first Puppet Master a low 8 out of 10. I know this is not a movie that will be for everyone, but I did have a fun time with it, and I love the stuff we got with the puppets. Ultimately, I feel like if you watch this franchise, they are why you're watching it. You don't watch it for the story, you don't watch it for the totally great, awesome characters, you're watching for some cool puppet shit. You want to see Pinhead punch some people, you want to see Blade slash and hook people, for Leech Woman to cover people in her leeches. You're watching this series for the fun puppet mayhem. And though this movie is also kind of lacking in that department, there is still enough here that I still had fun. Nothing felt like a drag, and again, I did think the story was interesting, but again, to repeat myself, it's not for everyone. When the puppets resurrect the body of Andre Toulon, a new puppet is born, along with a dangerous obsession for a beautiful young woman doing research at the inn. After the mysterious off-screen death of Neil's wife from the first movie, the woman who owned the inn, a group of paranormal investigators go to check the place out. The group consists of 2 girls and 2 boys. One are a brother and sister, and the other couple are banging. While they're there, an old woman shows up who is called by the sister. The old woman is a psychic, or something, and after encountering 2 of the dummies off screen, she decides to leave. But joke's on her, because the puppets are gonna kidnap and off-screen her ass to death. The next day, after assuming she left early, the brother ends up getting drilled in the head by Tunneler, who the gang proceed to beat to death with a lamp. They then investigate the puppet a bit, trying to figure out how it did what it did, and that's when Andre appears, just the main antagonist of an Invisible Man mockbuster. Andre says he's the man who actually owns the place, and the gang, though knowing he's a liar, go along with it. He says he'll let them stay, but they need to avoid his area of the inn. This is because he's currently working on keeping the puppets alive by creating an elixir from brain parts, or something. We then watch as the Scooby-Doo gang get a +1 in the form of the old woman's son, because the sister called him over and asked him to stay because why not? Might as well throw in a love interest. And as for the puppet side of things, they go around harvesting brains and lose Leech Woman in the process. That was a lame death, by the way. I mean, Tunneler's was as well, but she just kinda gets picked up and thrown in the furnace. We're eventually introduced to Torch, the new puppet on the block. His whole gimmick is he burns shit, including kids. Eventually, after most of the good people die, the sister goes to confront Andre, and he ends up ambushing her and tying her up. You see, drumroll please. Whoa, who could have guessed it? The Invisible Man here is Andre Toulon. You see, Andre, the half-dead magic man, is mentally insane. He believes the girl to be a reincarnation of his wife or something, so he plans to put her soul into a human-sized dummy, along with his own, in hopes to live forever, cause you saw how that worked out for Tunneler and Leech Woman, and Jester, who's currently dying because he doesn't have enough of the elixir. But nah, Andre, I'm sure when you do it, it's 100% guaranteed to work flawlessly, forever. The puppets, unhappy with this, or most likely just unhappy that the last of the life juice is being wasted on this, jump Andre and send his ass back to hell. But after the sister and the old woman's son character escape, the puppets decide to use the magic off screen and revive the old woman. I don't know exactly why, but they did. And now they're off to kill some mentally insane kids, because who would believe mentally insane kids? This movie wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. I mean, it wasn't amazing, but neither was the first. Ultimately, Puppet Master 2 is just a fun trash movie. It's something you put on with little to no expectations and just mindlessly consume, for the sole purpose of fun puppet moments, and that is it. That is all. That's really all this series has to offer. That's all this series has really been for me. I'm not hooked into the story or anything. I still want to keep watching, because I'm having fun, but the story's not the reason why. The human character's not the reason why. As I said, it's a fun trash movie. You're watching it for one reason only. Thankfully though, they don't try to pull a Chucky. Like in the first movie, the puppets were used very little. But here, since it's like, oh, you've seen the first, you know what's up. They just throw them in your face from the very first scene. It's great. Also, I'll mention, the zombie makeup on Andre looked like garbage. It looked awful. His whole get-up he wore, horrible. Everything about him in this movie, just garbage. And not a fun garbage like the movie. It's just complete shit. But, what I will give this movie, and the first movie, which I forgot to mention in the review, is the music is really good. Anyway, that's been all my thoughts on Puppet Master 2. If you want fun puppet stuff, check it out. Eventually I plan on covering like all these horrible shark movies like Sharknado and whatever headed shark. I fully expect my reviews to be largely the same as this. Like, you know, don't watch it for any other reason but this. Watch it for puppets, that's it. In the end, I would rate this sequel a 7 out of 10. They're trash movies. I've only seen 2 so far, but I feel confident in saying that. They're trash, but they're a fun trash. Alright, now we're talking. It only took 3 movies, but I think we found one that's genuinely good, and not in a so bad it's good kind of way. Toulon's Revenge is the 3rd installment in the Puppet Master franchise, and it acts as a prequel, as I'm sure many of these movies do. One of the main things I know about this series is its timeline is all over the place. And it is not in fact a sequel to Puppet Master 2, a film where Toulon gets killed by the puppets and dies a horrific death. You'd think a title like Toulon's Revenge would mean we get to see him come back in some way to get revenge on them, but nope, this revenge is for a murder that happens in this film. You see, back in the bad old days of Nazi Germany, Toulon was a puppeteer, or Puppet Master, as the series refers to them as, and one of his plays consists of a 6-armed cowboy named Six Shooter firing at Adolf Hitler. This, of course, catches the eye of a Nazi, but something even more peculiar to the man is the fact that the puppets move all on their own. After getting some pictures and reporting it to the higher-ups, Klaus and the wannabe Nazi zombie-making Dr. Hess head out with the boys to kidnap Toulon. When the characters meet, an unarmed Nazi guy along with Klaus end up murdering Elsa, Toulon's wife, and from this point on, it's revenge time. So once the murder happens, the Nazis try to kidnap him, but since they don't travel in the same car, and they let Toulon hold on to his potential weapons, the puppets of Pinhead and Tunneler, they ended up killing the Nazis in their car and just broke Toulon free. Well, no one but Kanye ever said the Nazis were smart. Oh yeah, and speaking of the puppets, in this movie we get Pinhead, Tunneler, Jester, and a new badass named Six Shooter. And along with them, we get the origins of Leech Woman, Andre's wife, who he puts into the body of a doll he made for her, and Blade. The rest of the movie sees the Nazis searching for Toulon, and the puppets helping him enact revenge on the people who murdered Elsa. This includes some basic crap like throwing a brick at a man, and some really crazy stuff like filling a man full of lead before sending him crashing out a 2-story window. Now as for Toulon himself, when he's not helping the puppets move around to aid him in his revenge mission, he's working on a new one. This one resembling Klaus, the man who delivered the final shot to Elsa. Which is strange, because Andre's first puppet, Mephistos or whatever his name was, is pretty much the exact same face that he makes for Blade. So, obviously, that face is not based off of Klaus. Even in the lore, I mean, it makes no sense. The characters say it looks like Klaus, and Toulon himself just straight up tells Klaus, "It's like looking in a mirror." But I mean, aside from the outfit, there's nothing even remotely similar. Anyway, the plan, I assume, because it's never really explained, is to put Klaus in the doll, maybe, to, like, torture him or something. I don't really know. Like, it's never explained. Maybe he's just making the doll to terrorize him. He wants to put someone else's soul into it so they can kill him as him. It doesn't end up being Klaus though. The person who goes into this puppet is Dr. Hess, one of the only really good characters, but we'll get into that in a minute. And then the movie eventually ends with the puppets and their master catching and killing Klaus. Then they leave for their journey to America, along with a Jewish boy he befriended named Peter. Yeah, completely forgot to talk about him. He's not really that important. I mean, he's the person who led Hess to Toulon. Innocently, mind you. Not like the kid did it to be evil and malicious. He just thought they wanted to talk. That kid, as you can tell by the fact he was never brought up until now, is, yeah, essentially useless. I mean, outside of that one instance. And I'm pretty sure he's never brought up again. So starting off, I love the character of Hess. He is one of, if not the only human character you'll really enjoy here. He's a man who's made it his job to try and bring the dead back to life so they can essentially reuse their soldiers in battle. And when he discovers Toulon and his mysterious living puppets, he becomes fascinated by all of it and wants nothing more than to just talk to the brain responsible for an amazing creation such as this. He ends up saving Peter from potentially being shot by a Nazi. He tries to protect and help Toulon once the Nazis arrive. It was no surprise as the man who was going to end up being Blade. And also, just a random little fun fact, the man playing Hess is Ian Abercrombie. He was in a Birds of Prey TV series that I never knew existed, and this Nazi scientist was in a show that you may be familiar with from your childhood. He was Professor Crumb in Wizards of Waverly Place. I thought I recognized his voice at one point, had no clue where or why, but I assume it's because of that, and I just thought it was kind of funny. Now as for Andre Toulon himself, I did enjoy him a lot more in this compared to Puppet Master 2, and I especially like the actor they chose. However, during some moments, like when he's supposed to be sad, he does not do very well. He's okay most of the time, but he's not a great actor. Hess, on the other hand, no complaints. I thought he was great. Oh yeah, and I also thought Klaus was an alright main bad guy. His death was really drawn out and needlessly gross, specifically snotty. But other than that, like, no complaints about him. Now, humans aside, as always, the puppets in this movie were awesome, and we get so much more with them, including backstory, like learning that Pinhead was a man who used to smuggle food to Jewish people. The puppets in this movie also express so much more emotion, and it was nice seeing little moments like Pinhead waving at Peter as he went off to bed, or the puppets seemingly feeling sad over the loss of Elsa. It's quite possible that at this moment in the series, this may be the best movie, and in the end, I'd rate it an 8 out of 10. Man, it looks like these things just keep getting better. The Demon, also known as When Bad Puppets Turn Good, for some reason, is the 4th installment in the Puppet Master series, and a direct sequel to the second movie. I mean, it doesn't have Torch in it, but instead Six Shooter, who wasn't in the first 2 films. But hey, I guess Charles Band wanted to give his dad another paycheck for saying, another 100 times. It's also worth mentioning that it does not at all, even slightly, touch on the ending of Part 2. If you remember, Part 2's very final scene had this life-size dummy possessed by a woman driving the puppets to a mental hospital for kids. Literally never touched upon, at all, even a little bit. However, I did go on to read the comics for this in between watching the movies, at least some of them, and that ending is actually explored in those, which are actually canon. In it, you get to see the woman killing people in the hospital, the puppets feel responsible for letting their old new master go there, there and do this. They go there, deal with the problem. Yeah. It's stuff that could have made for a pretty fun movie. And actually, all of that comic could make for a really good series of Puppet Master films. But anyway, that aside, because this is a Part 4 movie review. So the movie may not feature Torch. I mean, outside of the movie poster. But it does feature a new puppet. This one's named Decapitron. This guy comes from a movie idea Charles Band had about a man who could swap heads. Like putting on a killing head for killing and stuff. But because he didn't think it'd be possible due to the budget he thought he'd need, that movie never ended up happening, so instead that character lives on in this puppet. And I mean, it's not the worst idea ever, and I'm sure it wouldn't have been too bad as its own movie, but I would have just preferred Torch. I mean, the reason for Decapitron, which we find out later, is because apparently he's the only one that can stop the bad guy. Although we watched the puppets take out some of these bad guys, so, apparently Decapitron was the only one capable, but the others were doing just fine, so... Anyway, getting to the plot, this movie is about a man named Rick, who, along with a team, is trying to create artificial life. I guess he's getting really close. That or the evil overlords could just sense the puppet's presence in the hotel. Some initial thing caused the demon creatures to attack. I don't know if I just happened to miss it, or if it wasn't really specifically said, but yeah. Don't know exactly what caused the creatures to come here, because they're already being sent to these scientists way before we see the puppets, so it's not like Rick unearthing them did this. But anyway, yeah, the evil overlord, they send their minions to go kill all the people and the puppets, and that's it. It's not bad though. The movie's pacing is a bit faster than the last few, with this installment being about 20 minutes shorter than most, and so that means we get things moving a lot quicker, and not much time gets wasted on uninteresting or boring stuff. This, however, does come with some cons, such as the first 2 kills in this movie that happen in the lab happening off-screen, for the most part. And they happen so quickly that we don't really get a chance to know these characters' names. Like, it's made clear Rick and a team are working on this. However, the only 2 other team members we see are killed off just about as quickly as introduced. Personally though, I don't really mind. I'd much rather a Puppet Master set in a hotel than set in a science lab. Getting back to the hotel, Rick has his girlfriend come over and she invites 2 of her friends. Those 2 are dating. And the other girl, the one that's not his girlfriend, just so happens to be a psychic, to some degree. Though, the psychic friend is pretty useless, honestly. When she sees the Blade puppet in Rick's room, she senses a great evil, and then comes across Toulon's trunk. The gang busted open, and inside they find Tunneler, Pinhead, 6-Shooter, for some reason, and Jester. Not Decapitron, though. His location is rather odd. Once they're unboxed, the gang become friendly with them, and oh yeah, it's worth mentioning that Rick has no idea Blade's alive, and come to think of it, we, the audience, have no idea why Blade was running around the hotel while the other puppets were randomly locked up in the trunk. Anyway, so they become buddies with the puppets, but the psychic hates it, and she and her man go off on their own. Meanwhile, Rick plays laser tag with Pinhead and Tunneler. Eventually, Psychic and her boyfriend are seen using an Egyptian Ouija board. Or something. It definitely summons a creature. As a matter of fact, the thing that it summons is a totem, a minion of the evil demon lord Sutek. Eventually, the boyfriend dies and he's trying to escape with a car, and then Rick, his girl, and the psychic just run around for a while as the puppets keep them safe. And going back to Blade, before the other guy leaves to the car, the psychic told Rick about their spooky Ouija board experience, and so Rick goes to check it out. He doesn't find anything suspicious, but when he turns around he sees Blade and Pinhead. This is his first time ever interacting with the walking, stabbing Blade puppet. And he just goes, "You came to protect me?" As if he already knew Blade was alive. I mean, I wasn't expecting anything crazy, but just a little acknowledgement maybe? I mean, he's had Blade staying in his room since he got to the inn. I was just thinking there'd be as little as a comment like, "Oh, hey, you're alive too?" And I don't know. Anyway, so the puppets keep the 3 humans safe. And at one point, they Frankenstein a puppet to life. That puppet being Decapitron. Who, according to the head of Toulon, who appears on Decapitron's blank head, is, again, the only puppet capable of defeating the evil, even though we've already seen the other puppets do just fine. I'm sure he's mostly referring to the evil demon lord, and not just his minions, but even then, I mean, I don't know, I think the puppets had a good chance. I mean, when they're working together to kill people, they pull off some real crazy shit, like with one of the kills in this movie involving 6-Shooter lassoing one of them with a wire, Pinhead tying the wire to a lightning rod, and literally electrocuting one of them to death with lightning. Such over-the-top, very specific kills. That was a lot of fun to watch. I think the puppets could have handled themselves, didn't need Decapitron, but whatever. Him coming to life and saving the day was clearly supposed to be a cool moment, but I just wasn't feeling it. I'm just not as big of a fan of Decapitron as a lot of Puppet Master fans seem to be. And regarding where this puppet came from, he was in a small crate inside of one of the hotel rooms. As if in the second movie, Toulon went, "Ah, yes, I better make a new puppet," or take an already existing one, and stuff him into a box, then hide him somewhere in a random room of this hotel. Decapitron's existence is never touched upon, and the same thing goes for the reason behind the puppets being locked in the crate at the start of the movie, as well as the absence of Torch. I mean, according to Charles Band, Torch was because of budgetary reasons, but just don't do Decapitron. Charlie, I know you loved this idea. I know you were dying to do something with it, but why force it into Puppet Master? It's neat, and like I said, it might make for an interesting solo movie, but it just wasn't all that cool in this. Anyway, so the movie ends with Decapitron killing the final minion, Blade's been downed and hasn't gotten up, Psychic Lady is seemingly unconscious, or dead, and the evil demon Lord Sutekh might also be dead. Or well, that's how it looked. He made some weird dramatic falling thing in the brief glimpse we got of him, but yeah. Sutekh, by the way, he is an ancient demon lord, and Toulon stole some magic from his followers, who were ancient Egyptian sorcerers, who pledged their allegiance to Sutekh. I may sound like I think a lot of this is stupid and dumb, and yeah, I wasn't that big of a fan of Decapitron, but I did really enjoy this. This was actually a lot of fun. In the end, I would rate this installment an 8 out of 10. Its shorter runtime, along with its greater use of the puppets, make for a really enjoyable entry in the series, and it's easily one of, if not the best so far. Alright, I guess it was foolish of me to think that parts 3 and 4 being better meant they'd be progressively getting better and better as well. Puppet Master 5, the final chapter, is the final Puppet Master movie. At least, out of the first third. There's still 10 more to go. Yeah, that's right, Charlie, I'm counting the crossover movie. The final chapter is a movie that really did not have to exist. Part 4 was only an hour and 10 minutes long, and that movie saw the evil demon lord send his minions after the main character Ricky and the puppets because Toulon stole some of his magic to create them. That story was told in less time than the average Puppet Master movie. Now you could have easily tacked on an extra 20 minutes or so and just finished the story with the demon sending himself to the hotel. But nope, instead, for whatever reason, they chose to draw it out for over an hour and a half. The movie begins with Ricky in police custody. He's already in an orange prison jumpsuit and he's officially been arrested for the murder of the science people. Why? Well, because using the officer's logic, Ricky was the last person on the phone with them, and the woman was killed by something so small it wasn't caught on camera. And what just so happens to be small? The Blade puppet he found in Ricky's room. Clearly, this officer rivals the rape cop from Motel Hell in stupidity. Clearly, he didn't watch the full surveillance camera footage of the woman being attacked. He never even glanced at the footage of the other man being killed. He never looked at the footage of the mysterious figure that dropped off the monster boxes. And oh yeah, he couldn't tell the soft little puppet can't even stand on its own, let alone commit murder. Yes, they can Toy Story themselves to life, but just like in Toy Story, unless the doll decides it wants to do something, you sure as shit ain't about to get Sheriff Woody to stand up on his own. You could have made the Blade puppet around a car engine, but that means nothing when he doesn't have any way to use it. The officer's whole point was, you work in robotics. This doll has robotics in it. As seen in part 2 when Tunneler got opened up, there are mechanics inside of the chest area. However, its limbs and everything are still very soft fabric shit. That's not standing up any better than Sheriff Woody. I'm not expecting the best writing, logic, or anything with Puppet Master films. I don't expect anything from Full Moon movies. However, it still has to be said just how stupid and forced this was. And what's funny is, it didn't even need to be in the movie, because other than this instance, we never go back to this setting ever again, and we never even slightly go back to this topic. Now, for whatever reason, Ricky's then allowed to leave. Sure, he was arrested for committing murders, and they even had him dressed in a prison jumpsuit, but he could use a day or two to relax. So why not let him head back to the hotel? Before he left though, Ricky briefly talked to a man, I think a lawyer, and it's mentioned that there's 7 puppets, when in actuality there were only 6. The 7 is counting Torch, but Torch sure as hell wasn't in the last movie, and Ricky never once met the guy, but that won't stop him from pretending like he already knows about him once Torch finally makes an appearance 50 minutes into the thing. Once at the hotel, Ricky and Blade just sort of hang out and exist, and later that night the lawyer for some reason breaks in with 3 goons. Why? Because he wanted to take the cool monster puppets. This series sure ain't Chucky. If you tell someone there's a killer doll, they're gonna believe you, and they're gonna break in to steal them. Throughout the first, 40 to 50 minutes, we see the evil demon lord Sutek. He's doing his own thing in the background, thrusting around a tiny puppet with his giant meatball nipple sticking out. It takes him the majority of the movie just to cut his hand open, bleed on it, say a few basic lines like, "You feel me growing inside of you." Great writing there, Charles, and eventually transfers himself into it and then goes to the inn. Also, just that line. I watched a few episodes of Charles Band's podcast series. That man is insanely horny all the time. So much so that when Rob Zombie was on the show talking about being 12 years old and working at like a carnival type of thing, Charles Band kept asking him, "Oh, you must have seen a lot of tits, huh? Oh, that's around the age you start getting horny." Charles, stop it. Let someone else write your movies. It's clear that you must be the one writing all of them, considering all the newer stuff is just weed and tits. But that little tangent aside, so far the sexual content and stuff hasn't been that bad in these movies. When Sutek eventually arrives, he ends up delivering 3 of the 5 kills. Those 3 being the goons who broke in, and after the puppets kill the lawyer guy for assaulting Rick for literally no reason, Sutek and the puppets come face to face, and Decapitron blows his ass apart. Like I said, this movie could have easily been the real ending to Part 4, and considering that was the shortest movie of the Puppet Master films, I wouldn't be surprised if they took the ending off of it and extended it into its own movie, being this. It's fine that it exists, it's okay that it exists, but there's no real reason for it to exist. And going back to my mention of Torch, and how he wasn't brought in until 50 minutes, there is no reason he needed to be in this movie either. I like the puppet, don't get me wrong, but it was totally unnecessary to include him in this, when you've got so many other puppets that half the time, 2 or more of them just aren't being used. I love the fun puppet stuff, like Pinhead punching a man in the jaw, Jester whacking his balls with a mallet, but at least give them some more purpose. The first 2 movies were really good with how they handled the puppets. Part 3 did it even better, but these last 2, and it only makes it worse with the character of Decapitron. It's clear Charles loved this character considering he made him the hero who saves the day in the last 2 movies. But in the end of the day, it's just another totally unnecessary puppet that takes away from the already underused puppets. And there are plenty of them. Like I said, I love me some fun puppet stuff, but shorten the cast if you need to. That or give them more purpose. In the end of the day, I would still rate 1995's Puppet Master The Final Chapter a 7 out of 10. Its fun puppet moments are the only thing that saved it and made it more entertaining than Part 2. But ultimately, it's a totally unnecessary sequel that could have easily existed as the final 20 minutes of the last movie. It's a fine movie for Puppet Master, but if you're not a fan of these low-budget trash movies, like all the movies Full Moon does, it's not going to be for you. According to the brief plot description on Full Moon's Tubi channel, the evil puppets are back in a traveling doll circus run by a puppet carver whose monstrous schemes will bring out their sure fight to the death. And boy, is that a load of crap. The movie opens up with Mr. McGrew burning a box containing a puppet. Who's McGrew? Well, he's a man who bought the puppets at an auction. The movie takes place before Puppet Master 2, since Torch isn't around and Leech Woman is still alive. And we know it takes place after Puppet Master 3 because the film takes place in the States. When and why did Andre randomly auction off his puppets? Or, if this happened after his death, when the hell did the puppets escape, auction themselves off, then return to the inn to be found by the psychics? It's best not to think too hard about things. God knows the filmmakers didn't. So McGrew bought the puppets and we see him burn one. Now, who is the Kentucky Fried Doll? Well, it is not one of the main puppets. Assuming you didn't watch this movie first, I mean, why would you? You should at least know the main group by their appearance alone. And we see all of the dolls we should see for when this movie's taking place. So, if this was supposed to be a mystery, it was really bad. We later learn that McGrew's assistant went missing, and it was obvious from the first scene it's mentioned in that he did it. We learn, according to McGrew's story, the man ditched town to be with his dad. But the dude doesn't have one. And though I forgot the reasoning that McGrew gave to the cop, there was one point where he was questioned, where he made it clear he didn't know anything. And then, a few lines later, he was giving an answer to the thing he was questioned about. It was no mystery what he did and who was inside the puppet. I don't know if it was meant to be a mystery, I don't know if it was supposed to be some cool revelation, but in my opinion, if that was supposed to be the case, it really failed. Anyway, one lame local park puppet show later, and not a traveling doll circus later, we're introduced to a man named Tank. He carves things, and when McGrew sees a thing he's carving, he makes the man an offer saying he'll pay him a whopping $5 more if he agrees to be his wood carver. You see, because the mechanic's paying him $30 a week, but McGrew, the big spender, he's willing to pay $35. Now you see, McGrew wants to replicate the living puppets, and he believes the way to do this is make the perfect puppet, and put souls into them. We don't know how he knows how to do this crazy soul magic, but he does. The entire movie is just Tank carving a puppet, made of wood. It's later made out of metal, but whatever, he's carving wood. Occasionally we might get other scenes, like when McGrew's daughter nearly gets raped by a bunch of troublemakers, or when... I'm sure that a couple other non-carving scenes happen. Anyway, eventually, after nearly 15 minutes, the puppets begin doing their thing. They kill the leader of the wannabe rapist gang, they end up killing 2 cops who come to arrest McGrew, and then we see McGrew has Tank strapped to a table. McGrew transfers Tank into a, old-school Fallout terminal, and then Tank and the puppets kill him. The end. This is a real nothing movie. I wouldn't necessarily say it's bad, however, there's no reason for it to exist. We learn nothing new, we don't really get any cool puppet moments outside of Blade and Tunnel or teaming up on the lead rapist, and it really feels like a weird spin-off that doesn't quite fit anywhere in the timeline. I mean, why would Andrei auction off his friends to begin with, including his wife? And speaking of Andrei's wife, Leech Woman returns. She hasn't been seen in the last 2 movies, and she was only in about half of part 2, because Paramount, the company distributing the movies at the time, didn't like her one bit, because she was too ugly or something? I guess it's okay for people like Jason to look the way he looks, but when you have a woman looking off-putting, no one wants to see that. I don't know what their logic was. In my opinion, the puppet that spits leeches is kinda cool, but maybe I'm the weird one. I'm glad they brought her back. I think she's a really cool puppet, but other than a few brief shots with her in them, there was no reason for her to be in this. Just like my complaint with the puppets in the last movie, in this movie, Leech Woman does literally nothing. She's not even in the final fight scene where the puppets all attack McGrew. As for the other things I could talk about, the acting is hit or miss, the video and audio quality shifts around at times, and they even reuse shots from previous movies. But anyway, we'll wrap this thing up. In the end, I would rate Curse of the Puppet Master a 6 out of 10. That's kind of funny considering it's a 6th movie. It's watchable. It's possible you may like the story, but as for me personally, I just wasn't a fan. Like I said, there was very little cool puppet moments. They bring back one of my favorite puppets and do nothing with her, and we learn nothing new, and just wind up confused as to why in the world the puppets ended up at an auction, when Andrei was actively in the middle of escaping the Nazis. Well anyway, I'm looking forward to Retro Puppet Master. God, I wanted to love this movie more than I did. 1999's Retro Puppet Master is an origin story. The current day part of the movie takes place directly after part 3, when Toulon is fleeing Germany with the puppets and headed to Switzerland. Now as for the origin story, that takes place all the way back in 1901, I think? I don't recall the exact date, but it was sometime in the early 1900s. The story begins just as any Storytime episode, with the old wise man setting the kids down and shooting the shit. Blade discovers the head of another puppet in the trunk. That head belonged to a puppet named Cyclops. I don't know why Blade, aka the recently deceased Dr. Hess, would see a puppet head and think, oh shit, what the hell is this suspicious shit? I mean, the dude builds puppets. It's not unbelievable that he could have extra heads that are different parts. I mean, in part 3, the one where Dr. Hess is introduced, Toulon's whole thing is carving a new puppet. But anyway, this causes Toulon to share their story. But only part of it. I'm very confident in the fact the rest of it never gets told, judging by the fact there's no Retro 2. Anyway, ignoring the fact that Andrei and Elsa were together in the early 1900s and ran into the magical man in Cairo, Egypt, in this story, young Andrei Toulon, who for some reason is an English-speaking Frenchman, is doing a puppet show with his homies, and the beautiful Elsa is there in attendance. Lucky for Toulon, she loves her some hot puppet action, and so after the show, and witnessing an old man get the shit beaten out of him, she runs into Andrei and flirts a little. Oh yeah, and as for that old man, we did see him in the very opening of The Origin. I don't know how Andrei knew about that, but this type of complaint can be said for literally every Origin movie ever. Somehow people having flashbacks or remembering old events always remember shit they were never there for. Anyway, the old man is seen tomb raiding, and comes out with an ancient scroll. This pisses the hell out of Demon Lord Sutekh though, and so he sends his army of a whopping 3 mummies out to kill him. I know, right? Sutekh is so badass. I mean, 3 mummies? What more could a demon lord ask for? Anyway, so Andrei takes the old man home, for some reason, and when he wakes up, he tells him, hey, I'm like 3,000 years old, I stole a demon lord's magic and I'm gonna die. Let me teach you it. And well, Andrei very quickly accepts his new life as being the puppet master. Eventually the old man dies by suicide, like he just turns his hand on himself and force chokes himself to death. And then the mummies go, oh shit, there's one more magic guy, he has the demon's magic. And so they hunt hunt down Andre. They really suck at doing it though. They do the classic hot girl bait, snatching Elsa out from her home. The mummies taunt him in his dreams like,
"Lol, we got your love. The chick you met like 2 or 3 days ago. Bet you want her, don't ya?"
And so Andre hops on a train, because apparently the dreams also told him where to find them. When he runs into the mummies, he and his puppets kill them. It was very lame, but I mean, they did it. The movie ends with past Andre rescuing Elsa, and current Andre telling the puppets, "You want to know what happened to them? That's a story for another day." Because who ever heard of an origin story telling you the full story? I'm gonna be real with you. Though I didn't hate it, I just didn't like it. When it comes to spin-offs, I could take 'em or leave 'em. I'm not gonna get hyped for one, but I also won't instantly dismiss it. However, this is one I was actually looking forward to. I mean, this is a look at the original puppets, the ones that came before the iconic ones we're used to. Sure, they get 2 proper fight scenes, and a few other miscellaneous scenes where you might see one walking or picking a lock, but come on. Like I've said before, you watch Puppet Master for the cool puppet shit, and this movie kinda pushes them aside whenever it gets the chance. Sure, that just means more lore, but 1, this series lore is messy and confusing as hell, and 2, it's just not interesting enough. What do we really learn here? That a 3,000-year-old man stole a magical scroll and for some reason, when helped by Andre Toulon, forces this life-giving god power onto him, and then within the span of about 3 days, Andre kills some demon mummies and gets with Elsa? We don't even get to see what killed the retro puppets. You rushed the hell out of a romance plot, but couldn't do that with the origin of the puppets? I think the reason Blade wanted to know the story is because he wanted to know what happened to the head that he found in the trunk. That told him and us literally nothing. I didn't expect anything crazy, but I did want cool puppet shit, and just a fun movie. But ultimately, this one's just a bore and largely uninteresting. I'll be honest, I'm still really looking forward to the modern day Dr. Death spin-off, but boy am I glad to be done with this shit. Now I could go on about the fairly bad acting or the annoying guy who'd always say Mademoiselle in literally every line he spoke, but I think I'm done. And unfortunately, in the end, I gotta rate this a 4 out of 10. Again, it's not a bad movie, just boring and uninteresting. And quite frankly, the only thing keeping this movie from being skippable is the few moments of puppet shit we get, but even then, it's not that crazy. And the award for most pointless sequel goes to, you guessed it, the Clip Show episode. At this point, I fully believe Part 5 was indeed the final chapter. I mean, Curse the Puppet Master felt like a strange spin-off that didn't quite fit in the timeline. Retro Puppet Master felt like the cliche storytime flashback episode that really only told us the origin of a character whose origin we already knew of. And now this? This was the even more cliche Clip Show episode. The movie story, all 10 minutes or so of it, is about a woman trying to find the secrets of the Puppet Master, and so she goes to the Bodega Bay Inn, where she finds a much older Peter, who I guess was just living in the basement or some shit. She finds him, by the way, after reading a table-sized diary that apparently Toulon just kept with him, and she tells him to tell her his secrets. Peter doesn't really know anything though, or at least nothing he's willing to share, but every time she points a gun at him, he tells her more, by playing her cassette tape. Or sometimes she even tells him some story, as if Peter wouldn't know stuff. The clip show content we get is pretty sloppy and poorly done. It's not even a best of kind of clip show, it's just a really rushed and lazily told recap of all the movies. I mean, obviously you can't show everything in an hour and 13 minutes, but at times it skips over some very important plot details while recapping a moment. There really isn't a whole lot I can say about this one. Again, it's just a sloppy and lazily thrown together clip show attempting to recap the story of Andre Toulon. Essentially, the only shit that doesn't get focused on is the main events of part 1. But hey, curious about what happened to Rick from part 4 and 5? Well, don't worry, cause that gets brought up here. Bad news though, it's an easily unnoticeable line where she mentions shooting him to death to steal Andre's table-sized diary. She reads a whopping page of it and decides, can't find nothing here. The movie is just bad. These type of things make for some really lame episodes of otherwise great TV shows, but for a movie franchise? Holy shit, what were they thinking with this? This isn't something you make a whole ass movie about. In the end, I would rate 2003's Puppet Master: The Legacy a 3 out of 10. It's just bad. I just watched what is possibly the worst Puppet Master to ever exist. A made-for-TV movie by Sci-Fi, the folks who brought us the Chucky series almost 20 years later. The non-canonical crossover sees the clash of 2 of Full Moon's killer doll franchises. Puppet Master, the series about hero puppets and Nazis. And Demonic Toys, the series about... demonic toys, I would assume. I don't know, because I haven't watched them yet. And I'm not gonna lie to you, after watching this, I am not all that interested. The movie follows the main timeline of the Puppet Master movies, and maybe the same one as Demonic Toys? I can't really comment on that. Anyway, we know it follows the main timeline of Puppet Master due to some of the things that get mentioned, as well as the specific puppets we have left. Oh yeah, and also, there's that humongous table-sized diary of Toulon's that he supposedly carried around. We meet Ronald, Robert, Reggie, whatever his name is, Tommy Jarvis, and his daughter Alex. They're Toulons, great nieces and nephews of Andre's to be exact. They're working on bringing the puppets to life using the magical Toulon blood. Because, although this movie shares the same timeline as the other movies, it sure does mess with shit. So according to this entry, which again is non-canonical, way back in the olden days, one of their ancestors, John Paul Toulon, made a deal with a demon named Bale that in exchange for alchemist powers, he'd give him his soul. Useless, seeing as human souls fall into hell by the thousands on any given day, but it's whatever. Nobody said Bale was a smart demon. Anyway, the plan doesn't go through, and at some point, John Paul carved puppets from a sacred tree. Bale wanted revenge on the Toulon family, and now he's working with the Sharp Industries to help their CEO unleash hell upon the world while also getting his hands on the last living Toulons. Did you follow that? As I was saying it, it just felt like I was saying random words. Sharp Industries is run by a woman who wants to rule the world using her Christmas buddies. I'm not sure if they're called that in the Demonic Toy series or not, but I think marketing a teddy bear, a baby, and a jack-in-the-box as anything even slightly Christmas related is pretty stupid. What about these things screams Christmas? The movie sees a lot of poorly edited flip-flopping while the Toulons are working on the puppets for literally almost the entire movie, and Sharp Industries talks about wanting to rule the world for again almost the entire movie. We don't even get any Puppet Master versus Demonic Doll action until, I shit you not, the very last 10 minutes. Now I know the same thing happens with Sadako vs. Kayako, a movie that I really enjoy, but at least with that, there's reasons. One is a ghost confined to a videotape, one is a ghost confined to a haunted house. Here, these are just straight up puppets and dolls in the wild. Could have fought at any time, had plenty of opportunities, didn't happen, till way later. I made a point of jotting this down. The puppets, except for one scene early in the film where Six Shooter catches things on fire, do literally nothing until 1 hour and 14 minutes. And then we watch them poorly restrain the Jack-in-the-Box, go downstairs into the basement with Tommy Jarvis, then they aid in the really pathetic and sad final fight scene. The finale was so trash. Everything about this movie was. The acting was horrible. I hated the stupid voice Tommy Jarvis was putting on. I thought Bale was stupid. The dolls and the puppets were horribly cheap looking. At the start I kinda liked it, at least with some of the demonic toys, specifically the Jack-in-the-Box, but I really started to hate it as well. The romance between Tommy and the girl cop came out of nowhere and I hated it. The cop lady I just downright hated in general, honestly. I hated how useless the puppets were at times, and they weren't even given proper screen time either. What else can I complain about? There really is nothing good about this movie. It's literally just a film about one guy fixing dolls, one lady wanting to rule the world with dolls, and they pretty much just talk about it until the last 10 or so minutes. I wanted to love this movie, I really did. I mean, it's a wacky sounding horror versus movie set around Christmas, but God, it was just a nasty pile of shit. It has no redeemable qualities, and at the end of the day, I'd rate it a 2 out of 10. It is not the very worst piece of shit I have ever watched, but it's pretty damn close. I am both impressed and unimpressed at the same time. Puppet Master Axis of Evil is the first installment in the Axis trilogy, and the 10th movie overall. That's right, Charlie, I count the crossover, even if it was so bad. This movie takes place moments before and then immediately after the opening from the 1989 film. We're introduced to a young man named Daniel. Danny here has polio, or had. He's crippled up and can't go out to fight the Nazis like he's always dreamed of, so he's stuck at home, where he's currently working for his uncle at the Bodega Bay Inn building furniture. While this little meet and greet is happening, we see Blade running around outside. This is literally the opening scene from the first film. Not a con, just point that out. I will say though, the picture quality was so good, I briefly thought they might have recreated it. Of course you'll get the same effect if you watch it on Blu-ray or 4K, but just compared to the original version of the film I watched, and then seeing the HD one, looked so much better. We got back and forth a bit from Danny to Blade, and eventually we get to the point where Toulon puts his dolls away, and then, you guessed it, he blows his brains out. Danny ends up heading to Mr. Toulon's room, wanting to see if he could be of any assistance to him, hoping to earn a little extra cash. And that's when he bumps into the Nazis. And boy, I really wish we didn't get their backstory. It is not. And here we see the aftermath of the shooting. The room was looted and Toulon sits dead in his chair. It's not a perfect recreation of the original set, but it's close enough. I mean, you'll definitely notice when they go from reused footage to new footage, but it hopefully won't ruin the moment that much. Danny, strangely unfazed by the corpse, walks over to Toulon's hiding place and takes the puppets out. I'm not sure why exactly he knew the puppets were there, but he did. And rather than, not tampering with shit, he decides to rob the man. It's not like his dead ass is gonna use them puppets anymore. At least not for a few more years. Heading back home to LA with his new box of toys, Danny's reminded by pretty much everyone that he's a crippled who will never serve in the army. And this makes him pretty bummed. And while we meet his mom and girlfriend Beth, we occasionally cut to the Nazis, who came here to get Toulon's stuff, as well as work with Japanese people to blow shit up. Eventually, since one Nazi stops by Beth's work, Danny realizes they're here and follows one around, leading him to the theater where the Nazis and Japanese are working out of. They spy a little. By they, I mean him and the dolls, and after a little scuffle, they part ways. Oh yeah, Danny learned they were real living things. At one point he sees a metal injection hole, which was carried over from the Demonic Toys movie, by the way, and then he finds a vial and needle along with new ninja puppet and goes, yes, this must be magical life-giving potions. I need to fill the puppets with this. And so he does it. Also, Jester's like the main puppet, at least after about 30 minutes when puppet shit actually starts happening. I mean, he easily has the most screen time at the start, but then for some reason, he just despawns. I don't know why this franchise is so afraid of using him, but it's genuinely annoying. Jester whacked a dude in the nuts once, he shanked a guy in the face once, and I guess he assisted Pinhead in one of the kills in part 3. Other than that, dude does nothing but react. Not a bad thing, I don't mind his reaction faces, but holy shit, use this puppet. Anyway, he's gone after a certain point, so the Nazis track down Danny's family. How? Well, you see, one of them called the Bodega Bay Inn, and somehow, without knowing anything about Danny, learned who Danny was, and got his information. Never mind the fact that he was working for his uncle, so he wasn't official staff, or the fact that information isn't just freely given like that. I don't know how he was able to even learn the man's name, but he did, and so one of the Nazis go to his house. The mom and Danny's brother end up dying, and Beth gets kidnapped. Danny returns home that day, puts his brother into the ninja puppet, and heads to the theater with the dolls for revenge. And, stop the whole bombing thing. 2 Japanese people along with the Nazis and ninja end up dying. Then the Japanese woman steals some of the puppets and makes her escape. Don't know why no one tried to stop her, but yeah, cliffhanger, ooh, so cool. So starting off with the biggest compliment I can give this film, it looks nice. It's a very good looking movie. Keep in mind I'm saying this after watching 9 other Puppet Masters, so it may not be comparable to some sick 2023 film, but this thing actually looks like a movie, like actual movie theater quality shit. The video quality and shots in this film are really good. Now, when it comes to the characters, I was not that big of a fan of any of them. I mean, sure, Danny's better than someone like Tank from Curse, but to be fair, that guy wasn't anything special. I guess his brother was pretty alright. I mean, aside from the racist stuff. Something to keep in mind with some of these films, and especially just any non-PG film set in a time like this, is there's gonna be some racist shit. Whether implied or made crystal clear, there's gonna be things that'll make some people pretty uncomfortable. I mean, this is a film with actual Nazis. Just know that if that sort of acted out content bothers you in films, specifically towards Japanese people, this might get annoying fast. There's also World War II era slurs thrown at the Germans. That could be offensive to some people as well. Personally, I think the name given to them is pretty stupid. Like, the best the Americans could come up with is shortening sauerkraut. It's really dumb, but it may still offend people, so yeah, heads up for that stuff. Moving on, I liked what little we got with the puppets, specifically the Leech Woman's food kill, and the drill kill performed by Tunneler. But man, this movie seriously underuses them. They get a handful of scenes, and only a few of them have them moving to any serious degree. I mean, when Beth first meets them and goes, "Whoa, they're alive," they literally just stood there. Like, Beth, those could have been statues, you dumbass. But whatever. Now I suppose I could complain about Pinhead's long neck, Tunneler looking like a Chinese Elmer Fudd, or the bad acting. But I want to move on to Axis Rising. In the end of the day, I'd rate 2010's Puppet Master Axis of Evil a 7 out of 10. This movie is the beginning of a trilogy, and it sure feels like one. It can be slow sometimes, but I found it pretty decent. At least for a film in this franchise, though that's not saying much. 7 out of 10 is me being very generous. If I was someone who started this series with the Axis movies, this movie would have made me quit. Rising takes place the very second Evil ends. We see a recasted Asian woman hand over the bag of puppets she stole to the Nazis who were waiting outside. No, I meant bag of puppet, as in a singular one. Sure, there were others in the bag she stole at the end of Evil, but for the sake of the plot, there's just one of them, because why not? So she gives the bag over to the Nazis, and out pops Tunneler, which drills one of them in the face, resulting in her murder and the Nazis now obtaining one of Toulon's magical marionettes. The majority of the movie sees us watching the Austrian scientist work on reanimating the dead. I guess it's possible that Hess's work from part 3 was a huge thing, and this is the Nazis trying to continue where he left off. That, or it's totally unrelated. And on the flip side of things, we see Danny and his girlfriend Beth get jerked off by everybody around, because you two are heroes. No, they're not, at all. If you remember the last movie, Danny takes the puppets to the theater to kill the Nazis. Well, for some reason, I guess the Americans knew about this, and so the very first scene with Danny and Beth sees them get jumped by 2 soldiers to take them to meet with some high-ranking military guy, and the dude immediately congratulates them for saving the country. Never mind the fact that Limpy didn't do shit but watch everyone get killed, and all Tradwife did was sit in a chair with rope around her. So the Danny side of the movie just sees him getting his little crippled ass kissed, as well as he himself being mopey and annoying because, "Darn me wanna be a wheel soldier." Ugh. His whole personality is I want to kill, me want army. It's so annoying. And the scientist, his side of the movie, sees him hard at work using the newly acquired Tunneler puppet to make the living dead. There's also a really hoey Nazi lady that tries to make the moves on him. She basically forces him to reciprocate them, and then when he finally gives in, she snaps at him. And there's also General Mobius, the main evil Nazi dude who is forcing the scientist to try to get the reanimating machine working. Don't know anything about the machine, but it's a zombie making thing that Mobius has for some reason. So eventually the scientist puts together some puppets using the magic life juice he reverse engineered, and they, along with the hero puppets, end up in a brief fight scene that ends with Mobius dead, and the scientist leaving with some of the magic juice. I don't know if you could tell from my overall attitude, but this one really sucked. For starters, the acting was incredibly bad, and none of our main characters were fun to watch. As a matter of fact, I hated Danny and Beth. Beth is just a dick-riding 50s stereotypical wife, and Danny's entire personality, again, is just wannabe soldier. It's very annoying. He feels like that one any minority character that's only put in a movie to be a stereotype. Their whole personality is, hey, I'm from this country, hey, I like this. That's it. It's, me wanna kill ethnic slurs, blah blah blah. Again, just annoying. Holy shit. Some people like this movie. I was surprised. Some people actually like these new actors and the characters. I don't know how, but hey, if you can enjoy it, that's good for you. The hoey Nazi lady was stupid, and I feel like the only reason she existed was because Charles Band wanted to make Booby Puppet. That puppet was annoying as hell also. Her whole gimmick when she becomes a doll is, I must laugh like something from Alvin and the Chipmunks while shooting rice-sized bullets from my titties. All the puppets look horrible, by the way. They were so cheap looking. I've seen fan-made shit look better. And oh my god, they reused the hell out of so many shots. Some back to back to back. I swear it was worse than Axis of Evil when it comes to this shit. That stuff aside though, what about the scenes we get with the puppets? Were they any good? No, they weren't. Not only do we have to wait about 40 minutes after the opening Tunneler scene to get anything with puppets at all, but the small handful of scenes we do get were all horrible. Especially the not one, but 2 cat fight scenes we get with Leech Woman and Booby. You know, because they're women. So that means they need to slap and pull hair. Because, you know, girls. Lol. I wouldn't care if it was good. I wouldn't. Honestly, I wouldn't give a shit if you wanted to do some goofy little cat fight. But when everything else sucks so bad, at least make the fight scenes genuinely cool. Try to make an attempt. And making the 2 puppets with tits just slap each other and pull hair, it's not as funny as you might think it is, Charles Band. Everything about the Axis films, it's just a waste of time. But anyway, I could also complain about the random plot convenience shit like Nazis randomly getting a letter saying, hey, this high-ranking general's in town, right after seeing Danny and Beth get told this top-secret info. Or I could complain about how Danny leans pretty far away from a door, but somehow his hand lands on one brick that opens it. The door is a flimsy sheet of rotten-looking wood. I don't know why that needed to be a secret entrance thing, but okay. Or hey, what about all the moments where puppets try communicating? By doing nothing. Puppets will look at Danny, and he'll go, what's that? You want pizza? The puppet will just stare blankly. Oh, you want anchovies, pepperonis, no cheese at all, and extra sauce? That seems odd. He'll look at another puppet. Haha, yeah, you're right, Pinhead, that was funny. What kind of idiot gets this kind of pizza? Like, he'll communicate with them just by looking at them doing nothing at all. It's so bad. There's also the horribly racist Asian puppet named Kamikaze, who along with Bombshell the booby puppet speaks for some reason. And there's also that weird plot convenience thing where Leech Woman just so happens to be carrying around Six Shooter's head. Why? So there can be a totally cool and badass ending fight, which is really lame. Also has a random black costume for some reason. Don't know when they would have made that or changed the puppet, but okay. I know I'm complaining a lot, but you gotta understand, this movie is just torture. I have sat through 11 of these now, most of them pretty bad. The earlier ones, bad but fun. These ones, just bad and boring. Anyway, just a side note, for a series that loves reusing shit from the older movies, I don't know why they didn't reuse Albert Band's audio for Six Shooter. The new laugh they had for him is horrible, and nowhere near as memorable or iconic. Yes, Six Shooter does have a stupid little laugh, but that's just one of the things you like about him. His little heh heh heh. And here, I forget how it sounded exactly, but it was some really basic, generic I hate it, I really do. And hey, one more big complaint before ending this thing. As seen in Axis of Evil, each puppet seemingly has their own individual bottle of life juice. And as we know from previous films, like putting the homeless boy in Retro Pinhead, or how having animal parts in Part 2 caused Andre to mimic the animal, the life juice that came from Tunneler, for some reason, was able to make Bombshell act just like the ho-Nazi lady she was before. You would think he'd wind up creating an army of little tunnelers, but nope, because forget the lore and everything else, the magic serum bullshit just makes no sense. They're always adding things, retconning things, ignoring things. I apologize for just how ranty this review has gotten, but it really is not good. In the end, I would give this movie a 3.5 out of 10. Yes, 3.5 is pretty high, but it ultimately comes down to this not being the worst thing I've ever seen. I have seen horrible movies, and I know that those movies do not compare to this, but this is still really bad. Like, awful shit. I know there's people who love them. I have seen reviews where people will praise these movies, but they're just not for me. And you know what? Chances are, if I went back and rewatched Evil right now, I think the rating I gave it would drop. These past two movies have been a whole lot of nothing, and ultimately, I can't say I'm looking forward to the next movie. Fingers crossed the remake and spin-offs are at least a little bit better. I mean, it's better than the other Axis movies. Still a bad Puppet Master movie though. Axis Termination is the 12th movie, 13th, it's one of those numbers. Regardless, it is the last movie in the Axis prequel trilogy. The movie started off by killing Danny and Beth. Why? I don't know, but I'm glad they did it. Once they die, a man, I don't remember his name, I'll call him the American, he kills their killer, and then we see him report back to one of his higher-ups. The old guy he's talking to is like, "Sup, you're gonna be working with this magic gnome in a suit, run along." And from this point on, we see the American and the gnome along with the gnome's friends work on taking down the magic Nazis. Now what about the puppets, you may be wondering? Well, since Danny and Beth had them, the American took them. Our main puppets are aligned with the dwarf and his people for some reason, because why not? Sometimes people refer to the dwarf man as a former master or something. Maybe he has some weird relation to them? Spoiler alert, we never learn. We don't know why he's sometimes referred to as a master, but maybe it has something to do with puppets? Maybe just some magic shit? I don't know. Let's just get to the characters. So first there's the dwarf. He's a little man who's capable of doing totally epic magic. Or so he says. There's his daughter, played by an actress you know Charles hired for her body. She's capable of dreaming futures and pasts and shit. Then there's a black woman named George or something, and she specializes in sexual magic. Now, what is this? I know you're just dying to learn, right? Well, it means she can take her top off, like in one scene where she's trying to hone in on the Nazis, but has to do it with her tits out, for some reason. Or in the only other scene these powers are used in, where she takes her clothes off, distracts a man, and then Leech Woman kills him. Was the money worth it? I'm not shitting on the actress, I'm shitting on the character. The idea of it, it's so dumb. Charles Band is a weird, horny mistake of an author, or not author, writer. I will say props to Full Moon for hiring a little person. I find that in most movies, little people are only hired for a gimmick, like only when you need a little person, like for Christmas elves, or a joke like, "Whoa, here's my evil, intimidating boss," or "Oh my god, boys, look, this manly jock of a man took my wife from me." And though there are a few moments here and there where his height is joked about, he wasn't a joke character, which genuinely surprised me, especially with Full Moon. Moving on, the Nazis consist of an older man who looks like an alternate version of Harry Potter who got addicted to hardcore substances and really into dirty videos on the dark web. And there's also the new blonde Nazi lady. They're both magic and in control of the evil Nazi tank puppet, the Nazi werewolf puppet, and the Nazi hoe puppet. They're magic, like I said, and the little man, they have totally cool and epic powers too, or something. They also have a sidekick who's in a couple scenes. The Nazis, I mean. I'm pretty certain she's supposed to be eye candy, and that's it. And what they're doing is trying to get more puppet juice, and they probably want to kill Americans. The puppet life juice, by the way, is apparently a poison now, like it's used to kill people, and at one point, Blade attaches the vial to his arm and uses it as a weapon. Because why not? The movie ends when the magic people confront each other for a final time. Pinhead breaks the Nazi man's neck after the American uses the power of Americanness to withstand the magic force and knock him down, and the female Nazi is killed when the little man turns her puppets on her. Oh yeah, and just because I remembered this now and don't know where else to include it, Six Shooter is in this one, because why wouldn't he be? I mean, he was in the ending of the last movie. However, he was only in one very brief scene where one Nazi gets shot. I don't know why the Axis movies refuse to really do anything with the cool puppet. You know, the six-armed, gun-wielding cowboy. I mean, there are other cool puppets like Tunneler, but for the sake of, I don't know, reasons, he was the one that was kidnapped and kept by the scientist, even though it could have easily been Leechwoman or Jester or someone, but screw Jester. I mean, he wasn't even in this one, I don't think. I mean, surely he was, but I don't remember him. Okay, so that's Axis Termination. I guess after that was over and the Gnome family boxed them up again, maybe they just sorta got put back in the wall of the Bodega Bay Inn for some reason? Nah, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll find out in Blade the Iron Cross. I mean, it's a sequel to this movie, but then again, why would we learn anything that would possibly help with the timeline stuff? Like I said in the last review, the Axis movies are a whole lot of nothing, but at least this one was slightly enjoyable, at least compared to the other two. In the end, I'd rate Puppet Master Axis Termination a low 7 out of 10. It's the best of the Axis films, I'll give it that. I'm sure that the shorter runtime contributes to the enjoyment by making things move along a bit quicker, but don't go into it expecting the best Puppet Master sequel. It's a mediocre dogshit film at best, and quite frankly, at this point, I'm excited to put an end to this series. Only 3 more to go. Until Furnace Leechwoman. Dear God. Most horror reboots or remakes tend to suck. I think we can all agree on that, especially when it makes big changes or utterly destroys some of the things that we loved about the originals. But hear me out, this time, it worked. I want to start off by saying I absolutely loved the heroes in this franchise. Blade, Tunneler, Pinhead, Leechwoman, Jester. They're all such great characters. They're way more than just some senseless killing machine. And Andre Toulon, though I wasn't a big fan of his Part 2 appearance, I thought Guy Rolfe's Andre was a great character. Not the best actor, but still a really fun character. This is a series you watch for fun puppet moments, and for some of us, the lore. This remake, however, takes everything we know about the Puppet Master franchise, tosses it into a blender, then mismatches everything with anything. It's its own separate universe with a huge game-changing difference. Now, normally I would hate that, but to be honest, after so many lame or just downright bad sequels, this was a breath of fresh air, and I really liked it. It even left me wanting that sequel it teases. I don't know if we'll ever get it. I can't see Charles Band allowing it, just because, you know, not really a full Moon movie. This is a different company, but hopefully one day, we'll never know. Anyway, the first huge change in The Littlest Reich is with Andre, who goes from a man escaping Nazi Germany into a full-blown Nazi. Forget running away. He ran straight to the fatherland. The cold open sees Andre stopping by a bar, and after witnessing 2 women make out, he sends his puppets out to kill them. Now the puppets in this movie are soulless. They're literally just mindless, spiritless killing machines, mass manufactured by Andre so he could spy on and eventually kill all those inferior to the Nazis. And for the most part, all these dollies look pretty different too, with Blade being almost unrecognizable. There's also new puppets, like Robo Helicopter Thing, a Wheelie Robo Thing, Baby Hitler, Grasshopper, Beaver Tunneler, a gas pump, a stereotypical racist Jewish one, and a clown frog that I think is meant to replace Jester, because clown, Jester, sorta similar, yeah. And briefly talking about Tunneler, that guy gets horribly underused here. For some reason, Blade has a drill sound effect at times, which makes you think Tunneler's gonna get a cool kill, but nope. For being an incredibly brutal movie, and the potential Tunneler has for some amazing kills, he was used in like one scene, towards the very end, and that was it. Tunneler's done a lot more brutal shit in the original movies. Anyway, so the movie sees a newly divorced man named Eddie find a love interest and get her in a matter of seconds. And then the two of them, along with his Jewish friend, head to an auction held for the 30th anniversary of the Toulon murders. The entire movie is just about them being in the new hotel, and after about 30-ish minutes or more, puppets start killing people. And then it just becomes a brutal hack and slash movie up until Eddie and his girl eventually escape, run a truck into Toulon's tomb, and then zombie Toulon walks out to pump a cap in his girl's ass. The Littlest Reek is just a mindless kill people movie, and the kills get pretty gnarly at times, with one even involving a puppet burrowing his way into a woman's womb and bursting out with an unborn child. Shit gets pretty intense. If you go into this movie well aware of the fact that it's a remake and has almost nothing to do with the originals, you should be good, as long as you didn't absolutely love most of the sequels. In my opinion, this series started going downhill with Curse, so I was more than happy to watch this batshit remake. And in the end, I would rate it a 7 out of 10. It's easily one of, if not my favorite entry to come out of the 2000s. This is literally just Puppet Master Axis continued. You know, before getting into these movies, I really thought the Axis movies, along with this spin-off, was gonna have the puppets running around the battlefields, killing Nazi soldiers who were actively fighting the good guys. Maybe their goal was to like kill some evil Nazi leader. Not Hitler, but some dude, some higher up. I don't know. I went into all of them with no expectations. However, I did have a whole other idea in mind for Puppets vs. Nazis. I think it would have been cooler to see like the puppets running around killing people in an active battlefield. I'm not letting that affect my overall opinion of any of these. I'm just letting you know what I thought these movies were going to be about. But anyway, Blade the Iron Cross is a spin-off. It really isn't though. This is just another main sequel. As a matter of fact, it's a direct sequel to Axis Termination. It's about Eliza, the vision dreaming girl from that movie, and she, along with only Blade for some reason, like literally no reason at all, take down a small group of Nazis who are desperately and annoyingly still trying to reanimate the dead so they can have... Oh, I know you'll never see this coming. What? Oh, did you guess it right? Zombies. A zombie army of Nazis. I don't know why they keep going with the same exact thing, but that is so many of these sequels. It's just, I want to create Nazi zombies. Part 3 did not do it bad. I don't mind Part 3. The other movies, the past 4, not counting the remake, annoying. Do something different. Do something new. Try. I really miss when the only zombie in the series was Andre Toulon. Moving on though, let's go back to talking about Eliza and Blade. I don't have much to say about her, besides, you know, she's a fine enough character, at least, you know, compared to Tank and Curse. And oh yeah, everyone in this movie, as well as people in Termination, call her random shit. I call her Eliza, because that's how the actor playing her father pronounced it. It's spelt with an S though, and so sometimes people pronounce it Eliza or Alyssa, and at times even Ilissa. Her last name gets butchered quite often too, with actors flip-flopping between Ivanov and Ivanov. Small things, sure, but it's really noticeable when it happens. She never gets called the same thing twice in a row. It's always something different, and it's so dumb. I don't know why some idiot from Full Moon didn't step aside and be like, hey, it's pronounced this, do your line right. But these people don't care about the movies they're making, so why should we? Anyway, moving on. So Blade. We see him outside the trunk 1 or 2 times early on, but he doesn't really do much of anything until the last 20 minutes or so. This is really just Detective Eliza, the dream psychic versus Nazis, more than a Blade Puppet Master spinoff. It also just makes zero sense whatsoever that the only puppet we see is Blade. Nothing about this movie needed that specific puppet, and there's no reason the others couldn't have appeared as well. But anyway, so the movie sees Eliza track down the Nazis, and once she gets captured, Blade comes in to free her, and kills the bad guys. Oh yeah, he also disarms their giant evil space ray that's capable of destroying the Earth by turning everyone into Nazi zombie slaves. Yup, somehow we got to space Nazis. I don't have much to say about this movie. I mean, it's just Axis 4. It features very little puppet stuff, includes a strange and forced nude scene with Eliza captured, and keep in mind, none of the male actors had to do that. The acting was bad, and overall, for being 20 minutes shorter than the average Puppet Master movie, it was still too much. And I don't care about Eliza the Psychic. I don't care about the American-based Nazis working on the zombies for the 5th time now. I don't care for another boring Puppet Master movie. In the end of the day, I would rate 2020's Blade the Iron Cross a low 4 out of 10. It's a movie, and it's possible some people may like it more than others, but in my opinion, this one's a chore to watch. Shit, the Axis movies were too. These last 4 main timeline films have been nothing but a waste of time. What's the point? Honestly. Other than showcasing a few titties and trying to milk the audience for a few more dollars, what was honestly the purpose of this movie? Or any of these last ones? There's no reason they needed to exist. you could erase them entirely and the timeline would be the exact same. The story's pretty much nothing, and it's boring as hell. The characters have been pretty simple or downright bad. All the new puppets they've introduced have been trash. I'm not looking forward to the future of the series. Fingers crossed one day the guys behind the remake can make the sequel, because man, this shit is not looking good. Lame movie, but I like the ending. At the time of making this video, Puppet Master Dr. Death is the latest installment of the Puppet Master series, acting as a spin-off to the main series. The movie opens up with an older man, a World War II medic, dying of a heart attack in a nursing home, brought on by PTSD and the fear of a great evil he has imprisoned. We never learn why he had the doll imprisoned, but he just has it. When a young woman shows up for her first day on the job, she helps a few others clean out the dead man's room, and that's where they find a chained up trunk, keeping Dr. Death trapped inside. Once unleashed, the Doctor runs around murdering everybody he possibly can until eventually stopping his rampage when the girl asks him nicely. Why'd he stop? Who knows? He just randomly stops. Hey, don't kill anyone. Oh, okay, bro. Random, but because he politely did as she asked and gave her a moment to speak, she informed him she was his great-great-granddaughter and came here looking for him. Overall, it's a pretty mid-tier Puppet Master, but one line at the end brought a smile to my face. I'm gonna help you find your friends. This movie, according to one of the people working on it, the director I think, says this movie is set in the 90s, after the events of Puppet Master 2. Actually, according to his Instagram post and a video regarding the deleted ending scene, it was going to end with the girl and Death driving to Camilla's puppet show. Camilla, for those of you who don't know, or don't remember, was the old woman from Puppet Master 2 who was turned into the human-sized dummy at the end. Hopefully they do something with that in the future, because I'd love to see some more of that. And heck, it could even include other puppets like Blade, Six Shooter, Torch, but anyway. So this movie takes place around 80 or so years after Retro. We don't know why the spirit of Duval wants to murder everybody he catches sight of, but he does. Heck, at one point he pulls a Ratatouille and gets inside of a man to control his movements like a puppet. The dude's brutal in this, but why? I wish we could have gotten some more information on Duval's past, why he had a history with the war medic, how he got to America. I love-hated Retro Puppet Master. Nothing about the actual movie was very enjoyable, however I loved the idea of a story surrounding the original puppets, and I thought their designs were great. I think it's random as hell, but I'm happy to see Dr. Death get his own movie, mainly because that opens the door for other puppets, like we've seen teased at the very end. This movie is nothing special, and you could probably find indie movies on YouTube way more enjoyable than this 59-minute movie. But at the very least, like the absolute least, I'm happy to see it open the door for more movies. Specifically, non-Nazi focused movies. Movies set around the time I want them to be set, after Puppet Master 2. So although this movie may not have been anything special, again, it at the very least has me looking forward to Furnace Leechwoman, and whatever other movies may come out of this franchise. And in the end, I would rate this a 5.5 out of 10. I don't have high expectations for the movies to come, but at least I'm more hopeful than I was after the Blade spin-off or the Axis films.
Looking for more horror fun?
You're goddamn right.
Then check out the VHS comic book series, a parody of the horror genre that follows the lives of 3 teens as they fight to survive a horror movie, where every day is loaded with blood, boobs, and buds. The first 2 issues can be found in the description below.
I was obsessed with the VHS.